My full name, Lisa Welvolding. And Riley, you want to state your name and any
My name
other
is
names?
William. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. My name is William Sacha Rielly. I was born Manuel Sacha Bartels.
Okay.
But my legal name is William Sacha Rielly at this time.
Okay. And I'm, just so we're clear, I'm based in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. I lived in the United States full time for a bunch of years, but I was brought up in Canada. My citizenship's Canadian. And
we might be neighbors at some point because Canada is right now number 2 on the list of the countries that I am potentially going to move to.
You know, I think it's a good place to look. There's a lot of Americans, actually. I've spoken to Americans that I've told to come here. And there's lots of Americans that have come to visit more, and it's a lot more embracing, inclusive of a culture. So, you know, it's quite lovely. I recommend. In terms of what my approach, really what I wanted to do is to just really a thorough discussion. You tell me everything that you've been wanting to say, and
okay.
I'll ask some questions. This might be one of however many discussions, and I'll record them. If it's 1, if it's 10, and what I'd like to do, I'm sort of recording with an eye to your testimony, getting your testimony of what you experienced, what abuse you suffered, and what you were witness to, and an eye in terms of being able to get into a format in terms of affidavits. Whether we look at getting help from the International Criminal Court, because obviously what, you and I have discussed already, there's definitely a whole whack of crimes that have been getting committed by a lot of folks, and is even a case where there could be crimes against humanity charges in regards to trauma. So, and what else I'd like to do is I'd like to look at whether you would be okay with, me transcribing and then publishing something. I publish newsletters selectively. I have a newsletter called Outlaws of Chivalry I publish once in a while. And I was looking at perhaps publishing there, if you're okay, in terms of how it could help us in terms of getting the right legal support in terms of the International War Court.
I am for whatever puts a light on this, because in my mind, the powers that be are already aware of my position on it and aware that I have spoken up. And, the more light that is shed on there, I don't think that I'm incurring more risk, except for some maybe lunatic that wants to be a soldier for Donald Trump, because they are a little crazy. They're a little brainwashed. But, I don't mind whatever would bring a little bit more light to this, particularly the stuff, if we can get some of this stuff verified, and I know that me speaking up is one thing, but then the verification process, is important too. And I have read about software where, facial recognition software that taps into the banks of known cataloged child pornography. So if the films that they had me make can be verified, it's not something that I can go online, but I am confident that it's there, because somebody that I served with in the Army got put out of the Army for child pornography, and my chain of command talked to me and they said, hey, some of these images, some of the films or whatever that he had look just like you. And that was the first time I think I had ever talked to anybody about having done those films. And I told them, yes, when I was a child, I had to do those things.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about that circumstance. So you were in the Army. What years were you in the Army then?
This would have been my second time in the Army. I rejoined in, 2002, and I retired in 2016. I was in from 91 to 98 as well, so I did a little over 21 years. But the time frame that they pulled me into the office and discussed that would have been around 2008, 2009 time frame. It was in garrison, so it was between deployments.
Yeah.
So around that time is when they talked to me, and I can just remember. I can remember telling them that I knew it was out there. There was nothing I could do about it, and thinking that there was really no way to go about, anything at that point. I didn't know what I could do about it, if anything.
Yeah. So it was from our emails. It was one of the fellow soldiers that was caught with a bunch of child pornography, and then your commanding officer pulled you into the office to go through and said they'd seen you in the films?
I did not look at any of the films. All they said was, hey, we had to look at some of this stuff, and one of those people looks just like you. And that's the first time that I had, I think, ever really spoken about it. And I said, yes, those are probably me. But I did not personally see them. But they described something that I knew that I had been a part of.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Here's what it
more?
was.
Yeah.
They pulled me in, I can remember First Sergeant Bayless was kind of red-faced, and he said, "Have you ever made a movie with a black girl?" And you know, that obviously was, I mean, I'm not a movie star, so obviously that's a very odd question, and I knew exactly what he was talking about when he said that. Mm-hmm. So I said, yes. So he said, okay, well, we have found some images that are of a sexually explicit nature on another soldier's computer, I think, and they look like you. And I said, well, they are me. So he said, and you look underage. I think from that was part of their investigation to confirm that the images of the participants in these films were underage. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that was just a secondary verification that, I was only 12 or 13 at the time of that film, maybe even 11. So, I mean, obviously I'm not an adult. And even when I was an adult at 18 or 19, I still looked young. So obviously at 11, 12, whatever I was in that film, I would not have looked like a mature, an adult, you know? Mm-hmm. So it was more, I think, for confirmation that these images were of children. So I don't remember if he actually got court-martialed or if he just got UCMJ, which is just their lower grade of punishment. But I do know that he was chaptered out of the military over it. I think he might have had to do a little jail time, but I don't recall. I can't even recall the soldier's name that got caught with it. I just knew he was an NCO, a staff sergeant. And
was there did anyone else ever talk to you about the films again? Did they ever talk? Did they ever infer that there was any further investigation in terms to when the films were produced? Did they ask you anything about who was involved, or did they? No. They didn't go into any legality other than the prosecution of the soldier with the images. So in the military, it's a little bit different than civilian. I don't want to call it the court system because it's just the officers and NCOs in the military, but they have their sphere of influence. They have their little scope of operation, and if they uncover more, I think that they're required to give it to the civilian authorities, but they don't have any jurisdiction to go further than to just prosecute the soldier for the infraction that he is guilty of. If that makes sense, the way I'm saying it. No, I understand. Do they have any duty or is there any legality, or do they have legal requirements to inform civilian prosecutors in such cases?
Yes. Okay. If they suspect or if there's additional wrongdoing that is outside of their scope of being able to prosecute, and in this case to hold the individual soldier accountable for having this material that he's not supposed to have, they prosecute that portion of it. If it is beyond what they can prosecute, then they refer the soldier to civilian court systems. But in this case, the military did handle the prosecution of the soldier, and I think all he got was like 30 days and reduction in rank to E1. They kicked him out of the Army, gave him a less than honorable discharge. I don't think he even got a bad conduct for that, but I know that he was put out of the military, and I think he did the 30 days in jail. I think is the most that they can give you at the at the level that they prosecuted him at. So I'm not saying that for sure on the jail side, but I do know for a fact he was put out of the military. Okay, so they had films. They had some of those films. His name. Cable? Yes, Hable. That was his last name. Habel. I think Staff Sergeant Hable. I just remembered it because I could picture his face and I just couldn't remember his name. Hable. Okay, Habel. Yes, I'm relatively certain on that name. I don't have the best memory. I was in a blast in Iraq, and one of the things that I struggle with mightily are names. Yeah. But I'm fairly sure that's his name. Okay. And in terms of the films they had, so there was obviously a collection of pornography. Is there anyone you're in contact with of those your commanding officers that would they talk to you? Would they provide evidence, or is it a situation where Michael Bayless is the only one that I remember speaking to about it. I have not spoken to him since I left Fort Carson in 2011. I I would think that he would probably remember something like that. Just the unusualness of it. First sergeants deal with things day in and day out, but I would think that he would remember that just because of how it's not every day that you have to deal with something like that.
Yeah.
But it is possible. I think my commanding officer's name at that time was Captain Colasanto, but I'm not sure because you get commanding officers come and go. The first sergeants, they tend to stick around longer.
Yeah.
But commanding officers are a lot of times they're only there for a year or two and then they're off to the next thing. So
Okay.
My recollection of the commanding officer may not be accurate.
What's the spelling of his last name? Colasanto?
Cola, Colasanto.
Okay. Saint Cola.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you think would be helpful to talk about right now about then? The time frame? That was the first time anyone had ever mentioned to you anything about the films other than when you were involved in filming? Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The first time that I can recall anybody that it ever coming up, I always knew that they were, that the films, at least one or two of them were out there. I don't even know how many times I was filmed. But I can tell you that some of them are extraordinarily horrible. I can give you one instance where they were filming us. It was me and a girl that I knew that I had been trafficked with in other venues. And while we were filming, they came in and shot her in the head. So killed her, obviously. So that would be...
Was that the runaway?
That was another girl, and I can't even remember her name. Yeah. The runaway was tortured to death in a duplex in Enterprise, Alabama. My parents did that, and that wasn't on film, not her being tortured, but that was that black girl that I'm telling you about that later on Michael Bayless had talked to me about. But they went and got her because they were afraid that this was after the investigation in Tennessee, and they were afraid that they would go down for child pornography. So they were wanting to kill her, and then they were wanting to get rid of me via an accident, but they couldn't because they had already tried to kill me several times. They had the incident in Texas involving the Chevy van. There was another instance in Texas where my dad threw me into the middle of a pool and said, sink or swim. And somebody saw it and called the sheriff. So there was a police report on that. And then there was a third instance in Texas where my dad threw me down a flight of stairs. And that one fractured my skull. Now, there may have been other things that happened as well, but I remember those three were enough that they generated an investigation.
Yeah.
There were enough things that happened in Texas that my dad moved from Texas to Tennessee, and then got in trouble in Tennessee, and then moved. They got in trouble in Tennessee, and then moved to Alabama, got in trouble in Alabama, and then we just moved one more time.
And you're talking about your adoptive dad, William Kyle Rielly, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have located my birth parents. My birth mother lives in Sierra Vista, and my birth father lives in Edmond, Oklahoma. But I have not reached out to either of them. Mm-hmm. I just, within the last year, probably 6 months, I learned where they live. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That's just an odd dynamic for me, and I'm still kind of processing that. But as far as family goes, I have a half sister up in Massachusetts, and that's about it.
Okay. And your adopted dad, William Kyle Rielly, worked as a pilot and was involved.
Yes.
Integrated in
he was involved in all kinds of things.
Yeah. And he worked a lot with Trump and Epstein, correct?
I know that he was around Epstein and worked with Epstein. And I want to say that he flew for Epstein. And if not for Epstein directly, like transporting Epstein himself, he did transport some of the rich people to and from these parties that Epstein and company hosted. It wasn't just him. It was kind of a cabal of several people. And Epstein was the lead coordinator, maybe you would call it. But it's much more than just him as an individual. It was people like him, like Trump, other people. And I can't remember, like how many, but he was handy to have around because he was a part of the process, and he isn't just like an airline pilot or something like that. He can fly anything. He can fly helicopters, fixed wing, smaller aircraft, larger aircraft. I mean, he's that pilot, that multi-purpose guy that could transport whatever you needed.
Okay. So
And
it was,
I don't know if he ever got into the drugs. I can remember him talking at one point, and he had refused to do a drug run, basically, and somebody else took that drug run, and they got busted.
Yeah.
So I don't know what kind of aircraft it was or whatever, and it was around Florida that guy got busted at. Maybe he flew down to the Virgin Islands or something like that. I can't remember the specific details, but I can remember the conversation that my dad had talking about, thank God I didn't take that. And because the guy got busted and he wound up, huge amount of charges, 25 to life or whatever the heck he got. But I can remember from his perspective being nervous because the people that he was working with, he was scared that they were going to set him up to take the fall for something to just get rid of him because he had been involved in so much other criminality that he was really nervous about taking on anything else. I know that's kind of word salad the way that I said it, but I think you kind of understand what I'm saying.
I do. No, I understand. I understand perfectly. So your dad would obviously, my understanding is your dad was the kind of pilot that those sort of criminals would want to use because they could use him to fly anything in any situation, to airlift Trump out, like you said, when you almost killed Trump, when Trump was assaulting you, or
I don't
fly
think my dad was
guests.
the pilot in that one.
He wasn't the pilot in that case?
That kind of pilot, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. So, yeah, I've got, I've spoken to folks that, they look for those sorts of pilots. They want pilots that can get guests of traffickers into situations, in and out discreetly, trafficking victims in and out of situations discreetly, and victims that they killed out of situations discreetly, all sorts of nonsense. So, seems like...
And that's what he did. He shuttled the people, but I can remember him not wanting to cross the bridge over to running drugs.
Yeah.
Because in his mind, if he got caught with some people, he could just play dumb, and I was just transporting this guy's kid to, from the, here to there. I didn't know anything. So
did your dad...
go ahead.
Did your dad transport the victims most often?
Oh, absolutely.
So more victims than guests. I don't want to call them guests.
I would say more guests than victims,
okay.
But he definitely transported both.
Okay. And that was either directly for Epstein, wasn't transporting Epstein so much as Epstein's victims and Epstein's guests.
And the clients.
Okay, yes. The clients.
But he was definitely around Epstein. I can remember the one time that I can remember meeting both of them, and I can't even remember Jeffrey hardly at all, but I can remember the conversation in the car where they kept asking how to say Ghislaine's name because it was unusual, and during that meeting, my mom wanted to get the name right, for whatever. That was important to her,
Yeah, and what's your mom's name again?
Her name was Mary Lynn Riley. This would be kind of my third mom because my dad adopted me with a lady named Irene Ursula Litsky was her maiden name. Mm-hmm. Her name is Peter now. But those two adopted me. He got divorced from Irene in 79 or 80 and almost immediately married Lynn. So Irene may have been involved in some of that, but that would be from a time frame that I don't have clear recollection of. I do have clear recollection of Mary Lynn Riley's involvement, but she died via suicide a number of years ago.
Okay. Now, what are you most comfortable to talk about next? I mean, let me ask some more questions in terms of now, you told me about Trump and about Biggs and about Jordan. I feel like that's important to discuss in details. And let me ask you a question. Do you think it's more helpful for you to talk about what you remember first, when you were first trafficked, the circumstances, individuals involved, or do you want to talk about some of the incidents that we spoke about a bit by email already? What do you think is most helpful for you?
Fill in whatever gaps in that I can. I have spoken to you about most of what I remember clearly, but I can give you some of the details with those three, and that's why I am willing to talk about them. There's no. I remember more things, but I can't give you much in the way of detail for anybody other than those three. I can remember Jim Jordan. I went to a party. This was at a farm. There were 25 to 50 people there. I mean, it was a good amount of people, but not a massive crowd by any stretch. But the experience that my dad sold to those people was if you could pin me, then you could do whatever you wanted. But my dad had taught me how to fight. He had been a bare knuckle brawler earlier in his life, and I know that he had worked kind of just beating people up for a little extra money at one point in his life. He also entered into like the tough man contest, stuff like that. So it was kind of a game for them because I was just a child. So you would think that you could just do whatever you wanted. But if they got anywhere near me, I would hit them. And by the time that Jim Jordan assaulted me, I was old enough that those adults, most of them not being athletic in any way, these are people that, they're not fighters by any stretch.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't get anywhere near me. And Jim Jordan just sort of rushed me and tackled me. And I might have known how to fight, but I didn't know how to wrestle. So he assaulted me in front of a crowd, and I think that it was filmed, but I can't swear that it was filmed, but it was in front of those 25 or 50 people.
And how old were you?
That's why I remembered. I was around 12.
12.
When that happened.
And of those 25, 50 people... go ahead.
The reason that I remember Jim Jordan is, first, he stood out because he wasn't that much. He's only like 7 or 8 years older than me. So at the time frame that I'm at 12, he is right around just graduating high school, maybe first year or two of college, right? So him being so much younger stood out. And then I remembered his jawline. He has a very pronounced jawline. I remembered his voice, and his mannerisms haven't changed throughout his life either. So when I really started, as soon as Trump went down that escalator and said he was running for president, I got involved in politics. I started watching it. I started watching who supported him and everything like that. And I remember Jim Jordan just from watching him on the floor of Congress, speaking to the different people that go up there and testify. So and that's him. I just remembered him. So
yeah.
I know that's not a lot, but if you give me a polygraph, I'm going to take it because I'm 100% sure that it was him.
Mm-hmm.
And Andy Biggs, I remember, because on the way to this, they took me to a house. This wasn't at a party. This was later after I had assaulted Trump, and it was kind of a punishment type of thing where he was going to get to assault me and I guess not pay my parents, and he got to do whatever he wanted. And I can remember telling me I wasn't allowed to fight back or they'd kill me and, all of this. But they must have said his name 50 times in the car. So Biggs I kept hearing Biggs, Andy Biggs. And I thought, I'm going to remember this name. And after he assaulted me, I don't even remember the assault necessarily, but I remember being in the car afterwards and being like really nauseous, sick to my stomach. I was seeing spots. And the guy beat me until I had broken ribs and was convulsing, turning blue and stuff like that. And the only part of that assault that I can remember is laying on the floor of the room trying to breathe. And I could hear Andy and my dad screaming back and forth at each other. And I can remember Andy Biggs saying, "You said I could do whatever I wanted." And my dad saying, "I didn't say you could fucking kill him." And I think they may have actually thrown blows over it, but there was a heated argument and everything going on for an extended period of time. And then I can remember being in the car, leaving, and just having my eyes closed because my head was spinning and everything, and I was just trying to breathe, just in and out, Mm-hmm. So that's why I remember him so clearly. I have had more than one encounter with Trump, and that's why I tried to kill that son of a bitch, because he is a fucking monster. It's why I have not shut up about just how absolutely abhorrent he is as a human being, and that's why I tried to kill him.
Yeah.
Because I had decided, I had already seen enough other people die that in my mind I thought, well, they're just going to kill me too at some point, right? I'm not going to survive to be an adult from this. So in my mind, he was the biggest pile of shit that I had ever had to have any contact with. So I was going to take him with me. And
how often did Trump assault you? You remember?
I can remember two specifically. A third one that I think I was around him more than just those 3 times, but only 3 times do I kind of remember. I can remember at one point him asking the people that were kind of running that party or whatever it was at that farm. He wanted to kill somebody. He wanted to murder somebody, and they said, "Hey, that's not this kind of party. You can't do that." And they, in lieu of doing that, they said, "Well, we've got some puppies. If you just want to kill something, we've got to get rid of them anyway." So I can remember him taking those puppies one by one and like he snapped one of the puppies' necks. He cut one open and let it just howl and writhe in pain while it died. Held one under some water to kill it. He wanted to kill those puppies in whatever gruesome way, to experience, I guess, seeing them suffer in different ways. What his kink is, I guess, if you want to call it that, is watching people suffer. He likes to destroy people physically, mentally, during the process of the assault. That's why he stands out so much in my memory. And it's physical pain, and then it's also, degrading and all of that. But his thing was to just try to destroy human beings to the utmost that he could possibly do it, which is why I attacked him.
Yeah, that's understandable. So,
I can tell you this: the last one, okay, so this was after they had killed the Samantha. This is the black girl that I made the one of the movies with.
Yeah. And these were. Let me just ask a question, just to clarify. So when Samantha was killed, were all of these parties at the farm or similar locations to the farm? Where there was
it was multiple farms.
Multiple farms, and usually
yes.
It was parties. So there was individuals like Trump that were flown into the parties. And
yes, and they would have like a building, a house, and they would usually have like a tent set up, and it was almost like a little. I don't want to say a fair. It wasn't that big. They didn't have rides or anything, but it was a kind of a coordinated deal. Sometimes they would have the bare knuckle fighting. That probably is how my dad got involved with these people, because you've got boxing and stuff like that on TV, but that's really all you had back in the 70s and 80s. More the MMA type of stuff wasn't allowed, and these fights were a little more gruesome. They didn't fight to the death or anything like that, but they were bloody, and these were fights, and not just boxing. And so the rich people would pay to see that. Sometimes they'd have like a band playing, just like what you would expect at like a fair or something.
So the rich folks would get flown in, associated with Epstein, and they would pay to watch the victims fight. The victims were all underage, and would they pay to then assault the victims after the fights or during the fights? And they paid to torture the victims and rape the victims and kill the victims.
But now some of the fights were adults. So if they had some big old country boy and some other guy, they would pay to see that. They would also pay to watch the kids fight, and they did pay to watch me fight. I would fight other kids, and my dad was my initial trainer for me to learn how to fight. I would later go on to be a boxer, an amateur boxer, but that's how I got my start in all of that. So yes, they would have paid for that, and the experiences were different each time. There wasn't like a set thing. You never really knew what was going to happen. So part of it, a lot of it just comes down to money. So if they offered $5,000 to have sex with me, then my dad was willing to do that. Whatever the dollar amounts were, I don't know.
Sacha, that isn't sex. That's sexual assault.
Right.
I mean, I just want to say something first. I think you're extremely brave. You behave extremely strong, like a warrior. And I just want to stop and say it's important to me to say that, because a lot of folks, wouldn't even survive such trauma, but you've survived, and you conduct yourself with dignity and gracefully, and it's important to me to say that. I hope you know that. I hope you have a sense of your own honor and chivalrousness, especially what you told me in terms of drugs they used on you and how they lured you, drugged to behave monstrous towards other kids. I understand.
I can remember. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I can remember some arm of law enforcement showing me video of me harming one of the people that they were filming me with. Now, I don't know how that came about, whether they drugged me and I lost my mind, or they told me to do it. I don't know the circumstances, but I can remember being in that room and them saying, well, you did this. And it may have not even been law enforcement. It may have been, like the people that were running that. But I can remember being really upset because I had no recollection of having done that. It was me in the video, and I was beating a girl senseless. And I didn't kill her or anything like that, but
Yeah.
So, and I have a feeling, this part I can't prove because I only have my own experiences, but what the whole thing seems to be is that they first abuse you, then they get you on film abusing others, and now they have you trapped as well.
Yeah.
So you can't talk about the abuse that they did to you. If they want you to be a legacy victim, somebody that they can use in the future, well, then they've got to get you on tape doing monstrous things to other people as well, because now they have the leverage to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, no, and you know what? You're exactly right. That's exactly the tactic. And the tactic is insidious because, have you ever heard of the torture technique a lot of occult practitioners use? It's called inversion torture. Inversion magic isn't magic. Sorcery is just smoke and mirrors, nonsense, deception techniques. But it's sort of inversion technique where to try to linguistically manipulate the victims, to try to get the victims in a position where the victims doubt whether the victims, are good or not.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the case with a lot of the Republicans you mentioned. Like you said, Clarence Thomas and Lindsey Graham were at these parties. You can't remember if Lindsey Graham and Clarence Thomas participated. And it's sort of a question of, did they participate? Were they blackmailed because they were there, attended the parties, but they didn't participate? Can you tell me much more about Clarence Thomas and Lindsey Graham?
I know the least about him. The only reason that I can remember him is because he was a black man. And I'm sorry, but that club is pretty much just white folks. So having a black person there was very unusual. So he stood out. But the only thing that I can really say is that I remembered him being there, and then I remember what a big deal it was in our household when he got confirmed onto the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Because my dad was excited about that because of how high up he was. Now, I can't swear. I may have been assaulted by Clarence Thomas, but I cannot swear to that. If he did assault me, then it was not to the level of something that scared me to the point where I needed to remember it, if that's a good way to put that, which Trump rose to that, and Andy Biggs rose to that, and Jim Jordan rose to that because he was dangerous to me because I could keep most people away from me with my fists, but, he was a good wrestler, so, he scared me in that sense that this is a person that I can't keep away from me with my fists. Lindsey Graham, I am fairly sure he has assaulted me, but I just can't put my hand on a Bible and swear to that.
Yeah.
I know that he was there. I can remember it. He just like Jim Jordan, he has very distinct mannerisms, and his voice is a little unusual as well. So I could remember his voice, I could remember his mannerisms, and then obviously how he looks. So I can put him there, but I can't say he did this or he did that exactly. I just can't.
Okay. So
I wish that I could provide more information on that because I think some things went on, but that's just not enough for me to point a finger and make an accusation. But he was there. I can tell you that. Yeah,
well, that's enough. And I know that, some sorts of interviews we can look at a different time to see if there is any more information you remember. But what you do remember, I just want you to know what you remember to know. That what you remember is extremely important and is extremely helpful. I know you want to be able to remember more, and the memories are in there. And, I just want to approach the situation delicately because,
some of the other memories are just vague. I can, and I have been very careful too not to reach out further because there are some other names that I could mention that I believe were there that I know for a fact that my parents talked about, but I don't have a clear enough recollection of anything. Like I can tell you 100% sure that they talked about Vladimir Putin, but I do not believe he was ever at one of those parties that I was at. But his name was brought up more than once.
During the 1980s?
Yes.
Okay.
Vladimir Putin, I don't know even when he ascended to the presidency, but I remember the name because it was so unusual. Now, at that point, he may have just been, one of the Russian oligarchs or whatever, but his name came up, and I remember just because it's an unusual name, Vladimir Putin, but I don't believe he was ever there. So that is like, I don't know, there are other names like that too.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about
I remember Clinton's name being brought up, but I don't ever remember seeing it.
So Clinton was mentioned, but you never saw Clinton?
Not that I can recall. And that's another thing too. I may have had interactions with additional people, but during some of them I was so drugged out of my mind, I don't really remember what happened,
Yeah. When you heard them talk about Putin, so it was at one of the parties at one of the farms, do you remember what they were saying about Putin?
Just that he was some sort of foreigner that was very important. I didn't know any more. The name was just unusual, and they mentioned his name. They kind of had fun saying his name. Vladimir. Does he like to go by Vlad or this or that? But the meeting with that person, I don't think ever materialized. I think it was just something that was discussed and never happened. Now, if he has other connections, and he very well may, that's possible. But I can just remember at those parties, there were people that had strange accents.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it. That's all I could say. I couldn't point and say, well, this person was from Spain or this person was from Portugal. I have no idea. But what I do know for a fact is not every person at those parties was American.
Yeah.
I know that's not a lot, but I only remember what I
have a question with Trump. I mean, with Putin. Did you get the sense that the party attendees, that the clients were interested in Putin? There was something they wanted from Putin. They thought they could get money from Putin, influence from Putin. Did you have any sense of that?
The only sense that I had was that this was for the rich people, regardless of where they were from. So at this point in my child brain, I knew that there were rich people, and those people got to do whatever they wanted, and then there were poor people like me, and those people, that was the dynamic. So, that's it. I never heard them say anything about blackmailing and stuff like that, but I can remember them showing me a video of me doing bad stuff, and then I can remember people telling me that if I ever talked about it, what I had done was illegal too. And a lot of that was just bullshit because I was just a kid and they were making me do this stuff.
Yeah.
But
talk about malevolent hypocrisy. Dude, they were just utterly grotesque. They were trafficking you, they were assaulting you, they were drugging you, and then they were trying to
they were trying to make me feel guilty about any of it happening.
You. Exactly. When you were in a situation because they were trafficking you.
The last encounter with Trump, the one where I injured him, was the one that I remember the most vividly. And this was the setup for that. I can remember my dad, before we went to the farm, this was when we lived in Enterprise, Alabama.
Yeah.
So it would have been about 81 to 82, somewhere in there, maybe as late as 83. But he said there may be somebody that you know there. And I can remember the look on his face, and it scared the shit out of me. Mm. But anyway, when I got to the farm, of course, I'm scared at the farm because I don't know what's going to happen. But the first person that comes up to me is a girl named Patricia. This is a girl that I had been trafficked with before. And she came running up to me and, said hello or whatever. She was about my same age, around 12 or 13. And I can remember my dad saying, well, why don't you guys go run off or whatever and have fun? And I can remember not knowing what to do in that instance because, these parties weren't for me. I wasn't. And then he said something to the effect of, it's not like that for you anymore. You're a man now. You can just go out and have fun. Well, we went to go have sex. So we went and found a room and started having sex. And while we were having sex, people burst into the room. It would have been 4, 5, 6 guys, big guys, adults. At least one of them had a gun. I think 2 or 3 of them had guns. But they came in, they assaulted her, they beat on her, and then they shot her while she was still in the bed. They didn't beat or assault me, but what they said was, if you don't do everything that the next person coming in here wants, we're going to shoot you just like we did her. And I can remember them having like an argument because they shot her in the bed and then they had to go find another mattress. Well, that's when Trump came in. So that's why I remember him so vividly. And it was at that point I had already decided they're probably just going to kill me anyway. I'm going to take him with me. And I tried, but I did not.
How did you... So, obviously Trump was extremely violent. Trump's a sadistic psychopath. When Trump assaulted you, so sexual assault and physical assault?
Yes. So, at one point, I kind of acquiesced to whatever sexual things that he wanted to do. But at some point, he wanted me to have sex with him. So he lay down on his stomach, and there was a wooden tent stake that was in the room, and I had been eyeballing it as a weapon. And what I did was put the condom on the wooden tent stake, put it inside of him, and I kicked it as hard as I could, and that's why he had to get life flighted out, because I ripped him open.
Sweet. Do you ever watch the movie The Equalizer?
No, I haven't seen it.
Denzel Washington, sort of like Justice, when everyone involved in American law enforcement can't get any justice. That would be a sort of situation, obviously. I laughed because there's poetic justice there, Sacha.
That was what facilitated. Not only did I get really assaulted by Andy Biggs, I also got assaulted by like an entire party's worth of people. They took
after Trump was airlifted out.
Yeah, a whole nother party. So they took me to another party after that, and because I had done that to one of those rich people, they took me from like station to station, and they could do whatever they wanted. Most of them just beat on me. I can remember me standing there. I'd already gotten beaten up, I don't know, 5-6 times, and I can remember somebody urinated on me, and I said, "Thank you for not hurting me," and he just hauled off and punched me in the side of the head and knocked me out. I can remember leaving that party, and my dad was just kind of dragging me out of there. It was another instance, just like with Andy Biggs, where I got beaten to the point where, the room was spinning. I was nauseous, probably throwing up, maybe some broken bones, badly.
And how many perpetrators did you say again? 20 to 40, 25 to 40 perpetrators?
People that were there, yes. I would say probably 8 or 10 that just beat the absolute hell out of me. And some of them probably sexually assaulted me, but I can't remember. I can remember getting hurt, just getting beaten up and,
Was that before you tried to defend yourself from Trump or after? Do you remember?
That was after. That was as a punishment, if you want to call it that. What happened at that party was part of the punishment, and then I can remember them saying that this is the last of it when I had to go see Andy Biggs, but Andy Biggs almost fucking killed me. So I remember him to this day.
So when Andy Biggs almost killed you was after Trump as well?
Yes.
Okay.
After Andy Biggs was after Trump. The party that a whole bunch of people assaulted me was after that, and then the last one was Andy Biggs, and then I can remember my dad saying no more. I can remember him even kind of breaking down a little bit, like psychologically, because of just, I guess, the repeated watching me just get destroyed by people. You got to understand, it's not like boo-boos and Band-Aids. They were breaking ribs and really hurting me. I've got like a deformed rib cage to this day.
No, sounds like they were trying to torture you just to the point of death, to punish you and to send a message.
They tried over and over again to hint to me to get me to kill myself.
Yeah.
And I can remember thinking, there's no way I'm going to kill myself because that's what they want. So I kind of survived some of that just out of spite, to be honest with you. There's really no other way to put it, but I wasn't going to. I can remember hating my mom so much that I just did not want to give her the satisfaction.
Yeah.
As bad as my dad was, Mary Lynn Riley was even more evil. Her thing was sexually torturing me. So, and she enjoyed sexually torturing Samantha when they went and got her. And
Samantha was the runaway that Riley.
Yes, the runaway that she lived in a brothel, basically a house where they had 4 or 5 underage girls that they had scooped up from wherever they got them from, and they would use those girls at these parties. Well, at one time, they sent me to go be a part of that brothel. So that's when I made friends with Samantha, Patricia, and Sarah, and those are the only 3 that I can remember their names. But Sarah committed suicide, Samantha was tortured to death, and Patricia was the girl that got shot in the bed before Trump came in.
Did Patricia die?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Samantha, Patricia, and Sarah, and all 3 died?
Yes. Yes.
So Samantha was the runaway that was murdered by your adoptive parents?
Yes.
Patricia committed suicide, Sarah committed suicide, and Patricia was murdered in the bed before Trump came in. And then they threatened you and said to let Trump do whatever Trump wanted to do to you, or they would shoot you in the head as well.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I can remember them pointing the gun at me and saying, "We're going to kill you." And my dad protesting because he said, "If you shoot him, we're all going to go to jail." And he was really, I can remember him being distraught. Now he's a kind of a tough guy and, all of that sort of stuff. So that's what stood out to me was he was really scared because he knew that if they just shot me, that's not something he could explain to anybody. And he had gotten into so much trouble with trying to get rid of me already. With there's the Chevy van incident, there's the pool incident, and then there's the stairs incident, and all of those generated a police report. In addition to that, we went down to Panama City, Florida, to the beach, either Panama City or Destin, and they took me to a riptide area. I didn't know it was a riptide area. There were no other people on the beach. It was just us. But within like 100 yards, 150 yards, there's the regular beach where people were at. You know how they have the riptide zones. They don't want you out there, right, for obvious reasons. Well, they took me to one of these zones and had me, say, hey, come out here and play in the water and this and that. And for the first few minutes, it was just the three of us playing in water, and I'm just a kid. The beach is awesome. So at any rate, they go back in. I'm out there playing. Eventually, that current gets me, and I don't know how to swim at this point in my life. So it pulls me out, 100 feet maybe, and I'm bouncing up and down off the sandbar, just screaming my head off. Well, somebody that was on the regular beach, not in the riptide area, heard the screaming and came running from like 150 yards away, and right by my parents who were standing there. And he goes out there and gets me, fishes me out. By the time he comes back, he's nearly exhausted. And I can remember him and my dad nearly fighting. And at this point, there are other people that are coming, and that scares the shit out of my dad. But there was another police report with that, and I know that police report followed us back up into Alabama because the sheriff came down there and talked to my dad in Alabama. So there was another investigation for sure. So all of those things had already happened. And my dad was terrified that if something happened to me, especially so close to all of these other things, that all of these other investigations, he pretty much knew he was going to go to jail over it.
So there was at least the Chevy van incident, pool incident, stairs incident. There was police reports. How many police reports? About 3 or 4? And then
that are just involved in trying to get rid of me. And then there were, in addition to those 4, there were 2 investigations, one for the porn. And then when we lived in the duplex and they were torturing that girl to death, Samantha, our duplex neighbors there in Enterprise, Alabama, they called the police because they could hear, screams and beatings and stuff like that. And when they investigated, I can remember my dad saying, hey, he talking about me is just, I had gotten in trouble and got a whipping or something. And they did an investigation. They collected blood samples and everything from the house, but the problem was they couldn't determine how long that blood had been there, I guess. And it wasn't a match to anybody in the house. So for whatever reason, they just didn't have enough. And I don't think they were allowed to talk to me. I think my dad would have had to give them permission for the investigators to interrogate me. So I don't recall ever giving testimony as a child. Not in the police in that instance or in the instance up in Tennessee. Did you
provide any testimony to the police in any of those 5 cases? Well, the one case with the military, with the child pornography,
I can remember the sheriff talking to me at the beach in Panama City, and I don't remember what all was said, but I can remember my dad tried to get out of there, and the guy that went and fished me out, my dad's a pretty big guy, and he can fight, but the guy that went and got me was he was a tank. So it wasn't something that he wanted to really get into a fight about over there. And people started coming in. So my parents, I can remember them trying to hug me and stuff. Oh my God, thank God. I can remember the guy that fished me out and said, there's no goddamn way. I heard that from 150 yards away, and you're standing there watching him, and you didn't hear it, And, they tried to play it off like, well, we just thought he was playing, swimming and stuff like that. And I can remember the sheriff asking, do you know how to swim? And I said, no, sir. And they were like, okay, this fucking sucks. There's no way that this is legitimate. And I can remember the sheriff in Alabama talking to my dad and saying, there better not be anything that happens to him. He said, because I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, you're going to go to jail. I don't care. He said, I'll make sure of it.
So they had a sense, but they didn't know, they didn't have enough of what they thought of as evidence to be able to do anything.
That's exactly right.
And that was the case with Samantha as well?
Yes.
And your dad wouldn't let them talk to you?
What's that?
And your dad wouldn't let the police officers talk to you? So
right.
That also seems weird.
Block that, he did. Huh?
It seems weird. I mean, I know in Canada is a bit different, like, in terms of there would have been folks from Child Protection Services there, and they would have gotten you away from your adoptive fathers to talk to you. You wouldn't have gone through that sort of horror in Canada. I'm really sad that occurred.
At one point, CPS did take me, so I got into the foster care system, and ultimately, I was ungovernable, incorrigible. As at that point in my life, if you said something to me, I didn't necessarily, I didn't care who you were. I wasn't necessarily going to do that, and I might just hit you, because that was just my response to life at that point. So eventually, I made my way right back to that house. So I can tell you that throughout the process of trying to work with me, Jane Goodall was one of the people that worked with me. So I know that she is still alive. I think she's still alive. I think she's 91 now.
Yeah.
And she might recall having worked with me, because I would have been one of the strangest cases she ever had. Because at around that time frame, I had made the decision that I would no longer let anybody get within arm's reach of me. And if they did, I'd fight for my life. So, people had to stay away from me. I could talk. I mean, I wasn't like a feral animal, but I just would not allow people within my personal space anymore. And because of her work, with apes and everything, with gorillas, they kind of reached out to her to make contact with me to see if they could help me.
Yeah. And did you talk to Jane Goodall at all about what you'd experienced getting trafficked? I know when you and I spoke by email, messenger, you said was from during about 1978 to 1986 is what you remembered, 9 to 13, but you're not sure it could have been as early as 6 or 7 years old.
Right. I don't really start remembering what was going on until about 10 or 11, and I just know that it happened before that. I can remember being sexually assaulted by family. That's some of my very first memories. So, but as far as taking me to other places, and these parties and whatnot, I know that sort of thing was happening, but I just don't have a good enough recollection to really piece together much of a story.
So whether you were 6 or 7 years old or 10 or 11 years old with the parties? When you
Right. Okay. I know family was assaulting me, and then friends of family were assaulting me as early as 6 or 7. I know that. Some of my very first memories are of being assaulted. But as far as taking me to places to make money at these parties, I don't have a clear recollection. It may have happened as early as the first sexual assaults that were happening with family. But I don't have a clear recollection if that was going on to that scale at that time, but do have a recollection from about 10 or 11.
Okay. So, how much? No, it's okay. I'm glad you and I are able to have such a thorough discussion, and I appreciate again how straightforward and forthright you are. It's extremely important.
I mean, there's a part of me that just wants to point fingers in every direction, but I have really thought about, okay, what do I recall vividly enough that I would put my hand on the Bible in the courtroom, raise my hand, and say, yep, that's the truth. And what I am as close to 100% certain that if you put me on a polygraph, it would come back just as perfect.
Yeah.
So there are other things that I could maybe point fingers at, but then it kind of gets into muddying the water because I don't really remember them that well.
Well,
so
I think
that's why I just stuck.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think what I'd like to do, like, we'll continue discussing a bit about what we're talking about now. The things that you're less sure of, I'd like to look at a second a conversation just entirely focused on what you're not sure of, just because I think there is some important information there, but I don't want to muddy the waters in terms of what we're speaking about now that you are willing to testify in a court of law about. So let's continue focusing about any of the details about what you're willing to swear to in a court of law. And then, then let's look at, I would maybe look at, say, a second discussion and any follow-on questions from this discussion. Or I might just look at getting everything transcribed, and I'm just going to look at it raw, because honestly, in terms of, there's obviously thousands and thousands of pieces of video footage filmed that the FBI took that's all gone into some, whoever's been trying to profit off of is nonsense. So what I'm looking at, I'm thinking even a combination, like just a brief summary from me, like a paragraph, and I'll even look at just publishing the raw audio file. of our discussion
Okay.
with the text
Absolutely.
messages, because I think the context is really important. I think, especially because there's been so much collusion regarding copy editing of video footage that, folks that are really that are genuinely wanting justice, for them to just hear the audio recordings and read the text messages is plain as day. Anybody that experiences an ounce of integrity will be able to discern the truth. And I think it's so important.
And I kind of wanted to discuss one other thing too. One kind of theme at these parties that seemed to be very very well thought out is they would have a larger party in the beginning, right? And in these larger parties, you might have, say, a couple of fights or some drug use or things that were kind of, let's say, mildly illegal. But the parties would go on for multiple days, and as the thing wound down to the smaller inner circle in the last day or last 2 days or whatever, that's when the really horrible shit happened.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the people that attended the party, possibly even people like Clarence Thomas or Lindsey Graham, may have been involved in lesser things, but then were also at the same time and place where these more horrible things happened, but they didn't necessarily participate in those more horrible things. So that seemed to be an underlying theme of, and this is just me speculating here as an adult, where they would try to get these affluent people in all of these positions of power and influence to come participate in these parties where all of these things were going on, so that, if Clarence Thomas, I'll just use him, if he was there at the party, well then surely nothing, that nefarious could be going on type of situations.
Yeah.
So it seemed to be very well thought out how they kind of did things, but as the party wound down, that's when people in my position would really begin to get scared, because that's when either you're going to get assaulted and maybe really busted up, or, even watching somebody die is really fucking horrible,
Did you see anyone else die besides Samantha and Patricia?
Yes.
Yes.
So I watched a grown man get beaten to death. He had done something that pissed off the people that were running it, and they killed him. I saw another girl, in addition to Patricia, when I was making the film with the girl, they came in and shot her while we were having sex. That was some sort of snuff film.
Yeah.
And then in the brothel, there were 2 people that got killed. Sarah killed herself, and then the girl, I don't remember her name, she was shot and killed, and then another girl was also shot and killed.
Okay. And all of these...
Remember,
no, go ahead.
me and Samantha having to clean up. We didn't have to do anything with the body, but I can remember me and Samantha had to clean up the blood and everything from both Sarah's suicide, which was an assisted suicide. Samantha actually shot Sarah, but Sarah wanted her to do it. She just couldn't pull the trigger herself. So Samantha did it. I was in the room when she did it. But it wasn't a murder. Samantha didn't murder her. Sarah I can remember her just saying, I can't go to another party. I can't be here. Please,
Another of the victims, I don't know if you've read about, the British woman, Sarah Ransom, was on the Epstein Island and tried to swim off the island and was willing to drown than go through another.
Yeah, it's some horrible, horrible shit.
Yeah.
And, I can remember the hillbillies that my dad sold me to when I was small. They were mean, but I can remember the meanest motherfuckers are those rich people. They are just demonic, Trump included.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you some questions there again. So with the rich folks that you were sold to, that was all associated with the Epstein-Trump trafficking ring. And you said to me you thought
Yes.
Trump ran things with Epstein. Is that true?
Oh, yes. He was not just a client. He was one of the people that facilitated all that stuff. It was almost like, and this is just my childhood brain piecing it together, it was almost as if Epstein worked for Trump. And not just Trump, but him and maybe 6 or 8 other super rich guys. So
Do you remember
Epstein ran it
Yeah.
at the behest of Trump and that circle of people. So it was just I couldn't tell you how many people, but he was the only one that I remember that was at that level. But it wasn't that Trump was a John visiting, Epstein's empire of child victims. It was Trump was in a position above Epstein. It was as if Epstein worked for Trump.
Yeah.
And the rest of those ultra rich guys.
Do you remember?
It's like he ran that ring for them.
No, I understand. So Jeffrey was sort of presented publicly as the ringleader of the pedophile ring, but Jeffrey was basically behaving like a general manager of the ring. And then there was 7 or 8 other individuals, such as Trump, that were actually actively running the ring, micromanaging, telling Jeffrey what to do.
He would give Epstein that caliber of person, because it wasn't just Epstein. Epstein had people that worked with him too on a lower level that would go like find runaways and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know where they got the people. I can't say that, but it was this whole thing was being run as for those rich people.
Yeah. I want to ask some more questions in terms of your sense of like the demonic. Some of the advisor work I've done, some of my own specifics of law enforcement, I've come into contact, I've minimized any contact with, I'm familiar with a lot of really horrific horror stories that involve Satanists, occult practitioners, theistic Satanists. I've spoken to folks that were able to get out of the theistic Satanist cults. A lot of the torture techniques you describe are similar to theistic Satanist torture techniques, sexual torture, human trafficking, human cannibalism. And what I wanted, what's your sense in terms of these parties that what do you remember? Like, was there any overt, I know a lot of the attendees presented themselves as Christians, but their practices are full-blown demonic satanic. Do you have the sense that any of them were actually secretly practicing any sort of occult rituals, or were they just like rich, fiendish, fake Christians that just didn't experience a conscience?
I think it's the latter, just rich, fake Christians. I can tell you one thing specifically that Trump did, and that I remember vividly. I was exhausted. I couldn't fight back, and he sat on my chest and would choke me until I was unconscious. And each time that he did it, he'd say, "I'm going to kill you." So, and then he would choke me until I was out. And, he did that, half a dozen times or however many times. And I can remember him saying, "I thought I killed you that time. I'm really going to do it this time," and then choke me again. So he would just do that over and over again until he got bored of it. So did
you get the sense that he was trying to kill you, or just to torture you about the thought?
Well, in the moment, you think you're going to die, and that's the experience that he wants to see the fear in another human being's eyes that thinks that he's killing him. But looking back, I just think he was just torturing me. I think had he wanted to kill me, he could have. He could have just kept choking me until I was gone. Because I did get choked until I was unconscious. I don't know, as many as half a dozen times, maybe more. Yeah. So that's the type of thing that he would do, or worse. I believe, I wouldn't swear to this, but I believe that on that instance, my dad had told him, "Hey, you can't bust him up. You can't break stuff." Because all his CPS bullshit. Yeah. So, and I want to say he was upset at the end of that too because of the bruising. They didn't break bones or anything. But obviously I had bruising around my neck and different bruises on my body, and that's something else too that I'm just remembering right now as I'm talking to you. At least one instance, the school nurse got CPS involved, I believe, in both Tennessee and Alabama because of the bruises that I showed up to school with. Yeah. Of course, my parents just said, "Hey, he's clumsy. He fell out of a treehouse," or whatever excuse they gave. But it was looked into, but obviously nothing materialized from it. Okay.
So, let me see. Can I call you back in about 10 minutes?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. I just want to make sure I've got the recording set. I want to get into a file folder and get some duplicates, and then I'll call you back, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Talk to you in a minute. Bye-bye.